It remains the absolute most devastating global conflict in human history. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a chronological journey deep into World War II to understand not just what happened, but why. We're going to see exactly how one event inexorably triggered the next, plunging the entire world into a decade of unprecedented warfare.
To really understand the outbreak of the Second World War, we actually have to look back at the incredibly fragile peace of the First. In the wake of World War I, numerous diplomatic and political snafus created a highly unstable global environment. And while much of the American populace basically slumbered in isolationism, really convinced the world's problems would never reach their shores again, nations like Germany and Japan seized that exact opportunity. They quietly and inexorably began building their armies and laying out vast, ambitious plans for expansion.
Section 1. The Ascent of Adolf Hitler. A hunger for global domination.
World War II definitely didn't just start overnight. It was the direct consequence of unchecked aggression. After forcefully wresting the German government from moderate politicians, Adolf Hitler installed himself as dictator and ruthlessly suppressed the Jewish people in Germany. Unchecked aggression then fueled his step-by-step territorial expansion. First, he invaded the Rhineland. Then he moved right into Austria. Next, he boldly called for the annexation of Czechoslovakia. Every single step tested the world's resolve, and every single time the international response was dangerously passive.
Despite this incredibly aggressive march across borders, Hitler masterfully used deception to placate the international community. He famously assured the world of peace in our time, but those words were entirely hollow. Almost immediately after offering those very assurances, Hitler marched his forces right into Poland. That single decisive action finally shattered the illusion of peace and officially ignited World War II.
Section 2. Europe falls to the Axis, the sweep across the continent. The sheer speed of the early war took the globe completely by surprise. Utilizing groundbreaking military tactics, Hitler's forces rapidly collapsed Central Europe. They quickly overcame Denmark and Norway, aggressively repelled the British Army, and forced France into a humiliating surrender. By 1940, Britain was virtually the only European nation left standing against the German war machine. They had to rely entirely on the incredible courage of their people and their pilots to endure constant, devastating bombings by Hitler's Luftwaffe.
Section 3. The conflict becomes global. New fronts in Russia and the Pacific.
Over in Europe, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa. This was a massive invasion designed to conquer all of Russia. It resulted in some of the bloodiest battles in human history, with Russian forces mounting a valiant, iron resistance against impossible odds to stop the German army from taking vital cities like Leningrad. Meanwhile, half a world away, Japan was aggressively expanding its own empire. On December 7, 1941, Japan staged a series of surprise attacks on American strongholds guarding the Pacific Ocean, most notably the naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This sudden, crippling strike abruptly ended American isolationism and officially forced the United States into full-scale involvement in the global conflict.
Section 4. The tides of war turn. Massive counteroffensives.
Halting the Axis powers required monumental, simultaneous efforts across the globe. In the European theater, the Allies staged D-Day. This was the largest amphibious assault in history along the Normandy coast of France, while the assault on Sicily and the Italian mainland directly led to the fall of Italy's fascist government. Concurrently, over in the Pacific theater, the United States fought to halt the Japanese advance with a crucial naval victory at Midway, which was followed by their first major offensive at Guadalcanal to capture incredibly valuable airfields. It was a massive, highly coordinated squeeze from all sides.
The sheer geography of the Pacific demanded a very specific and frankly harrowing strategy: the island-hopping campaign. Allied forces couldn't just sail straight to Japan, they had to literally capture stepping stones along the way. Step 1 involved securing the Gilberts and Marshalls. Step 2 was pushing into the Marianas and reclaiming Guam after nearly 3 years of occupation. Step 3 was the bloody task of dislodging the Imperial Japanese Army from the Philippines. And finally, Step 4 meant securing the heavily defended islands of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, which brought Allied forces right to Japan's doorstep.
But it's important to remember that battles weren't just won with weapons, they were won with logistics and incredible feats of engineering. Consider this staggering figure: $150 million. That was the cost of the Stilwell Road. Designed by American General Joseph Stilwell, this 478-mile truck supply line was built to provision the Chinese army fighting the Japanese on its home front. It started in India, cut through almost impenetrable jungles and mountains in Burma, and ended in China. It required the brute force labor of 63,000 men and took 26 grueling months to complete. Crippling the enemy's supply lines was honestly just as vital as frontline combat. The factories in Japan were entirely reliant on resources shipped from remote parts of their empire. The U.S. Navy's submarine force, which comprised only 2% of the entire fleet, managed to sink an astounding 55% of all Japanese merchant tonnage during the war. They systematically interdicted convoys, essentially starving the Japanese war machine of the critical resources it desperately needed to survive.
Section 5. Victory and the aftermath. The fall of the Axis.
Over in Europe, the Third Reich finally began to crumble. Allied amphibious landings opened multiple fronts, Soviet forces steadily advanced from the east, and American and Free French forces pushed up from the south. Attacked from literally all directions, Berlin eventually fell. But in the Pacific, the fighting actually grew even more savage as forces closed in on Japan. The battle for Iwo Jima, a really small volcanic island prized mostly for its strategic airfields, raged for 35 days. It resulted in a staggering 47,000 casualties across both sides.
And the desperation only intensified from there. During the Battle for Okinawa, which was the last great battle of the war, the situation for Imperial Japan was completely dire. With their own naval fleets destroyed, they made a final, incredibly desperate attempt to defend their homeland. They sent the very last of their aircraft squadrons on suicide missions, deliberately crashing their planes directly into American ships in a massive bid for glory and survival.
Meanwhile, back in the Philippines, a long-awaited promise was finally fulfilled. American forces fought their way north to liberate Manila. General Douglas MacArthur officially returned to the archipelago, making good on the famous pledge he had made to the Filipino people years earlier when he said, "I shall return." The Allies were now actively reclaiming the last occupied territories in the Pacific.
The climax of this global conflict was terrifying and absolute. With a massive Allied invasion of their homeland fully imminent and the completely unprecedented reality of nuclear devastation unleashed upon the cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the Japanese war machine faced utter destruction. Imperial Japan finally submitted to an unconditional surrender. The Second World War was, at last, over.
The cost of this victory was simply unimaginable. Millions of lives were lost, and troops returned to homes fundamentally changed by years of immense sacrifice. As we look at the monumental task faced by war-torn countries trying to rebuild from absolute destruction, we are really left with a vital question to ponder. How do we ensure that the diplomatic snafus, the isolationism, and the unchecked aggression of the past never again plant the seeds of global war?